southern town was made famous by blood. None has become more famous than Fredericksburg. No population in any community in America could face calamity on a greater scale. The December 1862 Battle of Fredericksburg commenced an 18-month ordeal of 4 battles that left 100,000 men killed or wounded. This is the bloodiest landscape in North America. Roads, the Rappahannock River, and the railroad had fueled Fredericksburg's pre-war prosperity. For 130 years, farmers of Central Virginia had hauled their crops to Fredericksburg for transport to market. By 1860, the town's population had grown to 5,000, one-fourth of them slaves.
The town is one of those rare spots, solely to be found in the southern states, which has hardly had a building added to it for 50 years. It has long boasted itself as possessing a refined society, a society satisfied with the possession of a moderate competency, unambitious and devoid of Yankee restlessness and greed. The London Times, January 1st, 1863.
Fredericksburg lay halfway between the wartime capitals, Washington and Richmond. The same roads, river, and railroads that spurred Fredericksburg's pre-war prosperity also helped ensure its wartime destruction. A fitful and bloody 1862 left the Union war effort stalled. Defeat before Richmond, defeat at Second Manassas, stalemate at Antietam. The Confederacy crept toward independence. In response, President Lincoln and congressional leaders edged toward a new approach to war. If they could not defeat the South's armies, they would cripple the South itself. It was a type of war common in Europe, but new in America. The Union would strike at the Confederacy's economy and its social order, at the institution of slavery.
There are a great number who cry lustily for the Union as it was. I would not have the Union as it was, with the cancer of slavery gnawing at our vitals. Captain Henry M. Gallion, 121st New York.
Abraham Lincoln knew the Emancipation Proclamation and other policies would mean little without victory on the battlefield. For that, he looked to the Army of the Potomac and its new commander, Andros E. Burnside. Burnside's plan to cross the Rappahannock River at Fredericksburg and outrace Lee's army to Richmond. The Federal Army arrived first opposite Fredericksburg, but without its pontoons for bridging the Rappahannock River, a disastrous mistake.
We watched with trembling hearts the long line of Yankees pouring over the Chatham Hills. They came in countless numbers, and our hearts sank within us. Jane Hobson Beale.
Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia hurried southward to block the Federals at Fredericksburg. Lee knew well the stakes. Union victory would not only mean disaster for his army and perhaps the loss of Richmond, but also sustained hardship for the residents of Virginia. While Burnside pondered and planned and waited 10 days for his pontoons, Lee moved his army into position behind Fredericksburg, determined to oppose the Union crossing. The decision put the city squarely in the path of destruction. Fearing bombardment and occupation, the citizens of Fredericksburg fled by the thousands, often with the help of Lee's soldiers.
I never saw a more dismal procession. I saw little children tugging along with their doll babies, some as big as they were. There were women carrying a baby in one hand and a picked chicken and a bag of flour in the other. Where they were going, we could not tell, and I doubt if they could. Robert Stiles, CSA.
By December 11th, Lee had arrayed his 78,000 men in what many have called the strongest position he ever held. Marie's Heights and the river anchored Lee's left. Prospect Hill and Massaponax Creek anchored his right. Burnside ignored the obvious strength of the Confederate position, instead putting his faith in the strength of his 115,000-man army and superior artillery. Before dawn on the morning of December 11th, Union engineers started bridging the river. At the upper end, the effort soon turned into a bloody ordeal.
The bullets were whizzing and spitting by and around me. Some men fell into the boats, dead. Some fell into the stream and some onto the bridge, dead. Some, wounded, crawling along on their hands and knees, and in a few moments, all of us were off the bridge. All except the dead. Captain Wesley Brayton, 50th New York Engineers.
The fire of William Barksdale's Mississippians from the cellars, rooms, and yards of riverside houses put a stop to the bridge building. The Federals responded with a massive bombardment designed to root out the Confederate sharpshooters from the city.
Tons of iron were thrown against the place, bursting shells, falling walls and chimneys, brick and timbers flying through the air, houses set on fire, the smoke added to the already heavy fog. The bursting flames from the housetops made a scene which had no parallel in history. It was appalling and indescribable, a condition which would paralyze the stoutest heart, and one from which not a man in Barksdale's brigade had the slightest hope of escape. Private James Digger, 18th Mississippi.
The 8-hour bombardment devastated the city, but did little to subdue Barksdale's Mississippians. The Federals then mounted a cross-river landing to drive the Confederates away, the first major river crossing under fire in American history.
Hundreds of my comrades and I, on the hilltop looking down at the brave fellows in the river, tugging and fighting with death itself. An oarsman would be seen falling down dead or overboard into the river. It was sad. It may have been the saddest sight during my life in the army. Private William McCarter, 116 Pennsylvania.
Federal troops swarmed through houses and yards. For 2 hours, fighting raged in the streets. By nightfall, Barksdale, Mississippi had gained nearly a full day to strengthen its position. They broke off the fighting in town. The city of Fredericksburg belonged to the Federals. But the heights behind the city still belonged to Lee. Throughout the day on December 12th, Union troops poured across the bridges. Once in town, many soldiers started pillaging. Though Union officers did not order the destruction, they did not stop. By nightfall, the streets were filled with treasures, women's clothes, china, and even pianos. Dozens.
What was a short time ago a wealthy city is now nothing but a poverty-stricken place. Do our friends cry out against this? So do we. It is wrong, essentially wrong, but it is war. Lieutenant William S. Walton, 34th New York.
Said one man, the inhabitants left everything behind. The army left nothing. Meanwhile, Burnside planned for battle. His main effort would be against the Confederate right, against Stonewall Jackson at Prospect Hill. The rest of the Union Army would move against the Confederate positions at Marye's Heights. There, Confederate batteries lined the high ground. Infantry stood behind the stone retaining wall of an old sunken road at the base of the heights.
We have a magnificent position. I have no idea the Yankees will ever dare attack us. Evidently, a large army is in front of us. We hear their drums and bands playing, and my blood boils whenever I hear them. To a righteous God, I look for protection. Brigadier General Thomas Cobb, CSA.
At 10 a.m. the morning of December 13th, a stubborn fog lifted to reveal 50,000 Union soldiers of General William B. Franklin's Grand Division maneuvering in front of Lee's right in front of Jackson's corps. Jeb Stuart's staff officer, Heroes von Borg, remembered.
I could not rid myself of a feeling of depression and anxiety as I saw this innumerable host steadily moving upon our lines. Upon my mentioning this feeling to Jackson, the old chief answered me in his characteristic way.
Major, my men have sometimes failed to take possession, but to defend one, never. I'm glad the Yankees are coming.
Burnside's orders for the attack by the Union left were vague. Franklin was hesitant. Confederate artillery ravaged the massed Union columns and delayed them for nearly 2 hours. But at 1 p.m., 2 Union divisions, 10,000 men, broke away from the Union mass and surged toward Jackson's position. The Federals struck Jackson at a swampy gap in his line. They swept up the slopes of Prospect Hill and surprised a brigade of South Carolinians lying in reserve. For a moment, it looked like Union victory. But the Confederates rushed reinforcements into the breach. More than an hour, fighting raged. Thousands fell, and the Federals were thrown back.
We left the field over which we advanced, thickly strewn with our dead and wounded. All that we gained at so fearful a cost was lost. Death has been doing fearful work today. Sergeant Jacob Heppelton, 7th Pennsylvania Reserve.
After the initial breakthrough at Prospect Hill, the Federals did not seriously threaten Jackson's line again. Burnside later lamented the failure. I confess I did not think about that part of the field as much as I should have. Ambrose Burnside never intended for his army's maneuvers in front of Marie's Heights, on the right of his line, to be anything more than a diversion for the main attacks on his left at Prospect Hill. But as the day progressed, the fighting in Marie's Heights took on a bloody life of its own. The result, one of the tragic blunders in American military history. The advantage of terrain lay with the Confederates. Artillery crowned the heights. Infantry crowned the sunken road below. To reach them, Union troops would have to struggle across a canal ditch and then cover 600 yards of open field. Only the Stratton House, a slight swale, and a few buildings along Hanover Street offered any cover. The first attacks began about 11 a.m. Others followed, each one designed to support the one before. 18 times that day, Federal brigades repeated the bloody procession. By nightfall, nearly 30,000 Federal troops had plunged into the maelstrom.
The Union Brigade bent as it moved until it was the shape of a half moon with a concave toward the town. Batteries opened upon them.
We waited until they got within about 200 yards of us and rose to our feet and poured volley after volley into their ranks, which had a most deadening effect.
Men staggered, reeled and fell, but the others pushed on. From the wall and road came a living sheet of fire.
Each one of us fired over 100 rounds. The boys was just like the front court. Our shoulders were kicked blue for the muskets. They were sore for many days.
All that day we watched the fruitless charges, their fearful slaughter, until we were sick at heart.
Fearful that the Confederates might respond to the counterattack, Union generals kept feeding more troops into the fight. For 7 hours, the fighting raged. An average of 1,000 men fell each hour.
It seemed to me that men were falling all around me. Bullets spoke to me. Zip, whiz, bang, and the shells screeched. Horrible. It was so new to me and wild.
I noticed one of our recruits, a German, who was literally unnerved by fear. I think it was impossible for him to march. For myself, I confess that I never exerted more willpower to make my legs move in the right direction than just there.
On the hill and slope behind us, the sight is horrible and heart-rending. Wounded men fall upon wounded, the dead upon the mangled. The field seems covered with mortals in agony. some motionless, others dragging themselves toward the river.
There was one of my comrades, Johnny Brereton, praying too, perhaps for the first time in his life. It was a short one. Oh Lord, dear good Lord, he cried.
All afternoon, Burnside expected that the Union attacks on the south end of the field would continue. They did not. But the attacks at Marie's Heights, intended to be only secondary, continued unchecked till dusk. Thousands would spend the night huddled in the cold, seeking comfort from the mud amidst the dead. The shock from the slaughter in front of the Heights would reverberate through northern living rooms, churches, and halls of Congress for months to come.
What a sacrifice of human life. Thousands more offered up to the god of war. And what has been gained? No wonder the patriot begins to exclaim, "My country, my country." How long must this terrible sacrifice of human life continue? Lieutenant George Breck, Battery L, 1st New York Artillery.
Humiliated by the disaster on December 13, Union Commander Burnside urged renewal of the attacks the following day, even offering to lead the assaults himself. His subordinates talked him out of more bloodshed. The Union Army retreated across the river on December 15, and the Confederates reclaimed the town.
The part of the town known as Sandy Bottom was the scene of the most terrible fighting, and every house facing Marie's Hill is covered with bullet marks. Mr. Marie's house, Brompton, which is brick, is raked by musket balls until it looks as if a hailstorm had scoured it. The town was full of dead men when evacuated. It seems very strange to see a deserted town with nothing but corpses of dead men and horses for inhabitants. Captain Charles Minor Blackford, 2nd Virginia Cavalry.
Word of the victory at Fredericksburg buoyed Confederate spirits. News of destruction in the town heartened the South's determination to persevere.
No victory of the war has ever done me so much good. I hate them worse than ever, and their destruction of poor old Fredericksburg. It seems to me that I don't do anything from morning to night but hate them worse and worse. Lieutenant B. Lewis Blackford, CSA.
Shoot them, dear husband, every chance you get. It is God's will and wish for you to destroy them. It is your Christian duty. Would that I may be allowed to take up arms. I would fight them until I died. Arabella Pettit, Fluvanna County, Virginia.
After the battle, Abraham Lincoln suffered criticism from all sides. If there is a place worse than hell, he told a friend, I am in it. Still he persevered. 2 weeks after Fredericksburg, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring the war to be not just a struggle for reunification, but also for freedom. But the victories Lincoln so desperately needed would be elusive. In a masterpiece of battle, Lee and Jackson again defeated the Federals in May 1863, this time at Chancellorsville. In May 1864, Lee would once more confront the Union Army, now under Ulysses S. Grant. In the gloom of the wilderness, stalemate. In the serpentine earthworks of Spotsylvania Courthouse, stalemate again. But Grant punished the Confederate Army as no one had before. Lee faced a military juggernaut he could slow, but could not stop. By May 1864, the harsh treatment of civilians foreshadowed at Fredericksburg had become policy, eroding the Confederacy's ability to wage war. In 1865, the Confederacy collapsed. The Union was restored, and more than 4 million slaves were emancipated. Ravaged by wartime losses and the exodus of former slaves, it would take Spotsylvania County nearly 100 years to regain its wartime population. Even today, the scars linger. The ravaged walls of the Innes house. The haunting remnants of Spotsylvania's bloody angle. The slave auction block on a downtown corner. The rows and rows of graves. These places are reminders that here, on the fields in and around Fredericksburg, the American Civil War continued its transformation from a clash of armies into a war between cultures. A war that would change this nation and this community forevermore.